Hello and welcome to today's Cuppa with Katie, but I'm taking over the usual show with my Next Level Love interview series, and I'm loving it so much. We're having a blast every day. These conversations are just so, I mean, who doesn't love listening to a love story, right? And today I'm joined by Tiffany Harnsongkram. Hi Tiff, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
So nice to chat again. These are really fun.
I know. And where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Southwest France between Bordeaux and Spain.
How very lovely. And okay, where are we even going to begin with this conversation? I'm trying to remember when we first met, actually, and how we came across each other. And it was through a mutual friend, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you were giving me some experience and some mentorship in, what it is to be a coach, because this friend of ours, who is also an amazing coach, was helping me along my first steps of, starting to take my knowledge and put it to use. So I really appreciated you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. That's right. And I'd forgotten that's how we were introduced. Yeah. So do you want to actually share what amazing work you're doing in the world right now? Because I have a feeling there'll be some women watching this that will be interested in what you do.
Yeah, I am a conscious divorce educator and mentor through my own experience, so which we'll discuss today, I'm sure. I had a high conflict divorce about 9 years ago that took me through an entire rebirthing process. And it took me a while to kind of be able to value what I learned through all that. But I saw a very clear process of coming to consciousness and sovereignty over my life and being able to create what I wanted to create, but also this maturation, like a spiritual, emotional, mental maturation process. That's really actually served me in every aspect of my life, as generally coaching and leveling up does. But during COVID, people were having distressful situations in their relationships and going through divorces. And so it called me to, start sharing the process that I had been through. And I think you completely agree with me that conscious divorce is something that we need to bring to the table as far as an option. We're really presented with, hey, you're divorcing. Have you called a lawyer? How are you splitting the finances? Like, that's the conversation that we have on the table. Yeah. And it's not the real conversation of like, what's happening with your identity? Who are you? What do you want now? How do you rebuild yourself? How do you heal? How do you thrive? That's the first conversation that we need to have. And also knowing that it doesn't have to be this war zone. It can also be a transformative experience where we allow ourselves to kind of, audit, but rebuild and re-inspire and re-engage in life in a new way, in a new chapter. And that one we don't hear so much about, a lot of pain and suffering and guilt and fear and all those things that we hear about. And I think people get kind of shocked when I'm talking about, like, oh, it was the worst, but the best thing that ever happened to me.
When you said that, like that the first thing people want to know is how are you splitting the finances? Have you got yourself a good solicitor? It just hit me in the heart, and my eyes immediately welled up then when you said that, because you're right. It's like, well, hold the horses for a second. What about your emotional well-being? Just like the fallout and the heartbreak, and who's helping and supporting you with that piece? Because what I'm seeing in women, and it was my situation too, is that heartbreak and anything unresolved from that relationship and the patterns of behavior and so on that you probably picked up from that relationship that you're going to continue to react to going forward if you don't deal with it. Like, these are all blocks to calling in your next level love. This is like, if this stuff's not addressed and, acknowledged and healed and cleaned up, you cannot move healthily into another relationship, let alone a relationship that's better, that's more empowered, that's, you know,
Oh, yeah.
this needs paying attention. So I'm just going to
Absolute
just
agreement.
acknowledge everyone that's here live. Hello, darlings. Good to have you. Someone, I don't know who that is, but someone's painting while listening to our show today.
Lovely.
So awesome. Hey, Helen, good to have you. Let us know who's joining. And if you're on the replay, do type #replay so I can say hi to you and keep track of who's watching. So, all right, you, Tiffany, you said let's talk about your love story. And before we talk about how you called in your next level love, let's go right back in time to where Ruth is painting. Hey, Ruth. Let's go back in time to your how far back in time do you want to go? Do we go back to your previous marriage? Do we go back further?
Yeah, it might actually be interesting to bring in the dynamics that were happening in my previous marriage to talk about how, you know, how those changed in my next relationship, and like how I made that shift that you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
Cool.
So where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start? I think a lot of this was just letting go of a lot of programs that I had and shoulds that I had upon myself and expectations I had upon myself when I was, you know, when I was married at 24. I was deeply religious, very deeply religious, so much so that in fact one of my courses now is on healing shame and guilt around religion and divorce, because it was something that I had studied, something that I held as my highest priority. And so because of that, I had this notion that if I was married or if I had children or if I had my own family, that would bring me fulfillment, but also kind of like my highest purpose was in serving them and in creating a beautiful home and creating a beautiful family, which I agree that is of tremendous high service and can be very fulfilling, but it wasn't all of who I was. And I was in a relationship that was, I felt, tremendously demeaning to me, where there was financial abuse. And by that, I mean that my ex-husband had control of the finances and acted as if I was an employee, essentially, or if I wasn't, sometimes he was making the money and I was just taking care of the kids, which was essentially worthless. But in fact,
worthless to the disempowered masculine. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it was a very traditional paradigm in that sense. And that's not actually true, because I built the family business and I did that after my children went to bed. However, the whole notion of these gender roles and how they were valued was something that kept me really small, but I had kept myself really small in that I had tried to fit myself in this little box of who I should have been, according to maybe even familial expectations, definitely religious, definitely social expectations. And, I breastfed both my children for 2 years each. I was really like trying my best to just be the perfect wife and mother. And I felt like I was dying inside a bit. I felt like my brain was melting most days when I was living Groundhog Day and repeat. I know.
And then running a business in the evenings.
And then running a business in the evenings and not having any time for, self-replenishment. And so when you do that, you're taking on everybody else's narrative onto who you should be. And then at the end of the day, not having any time to build or replenish who you really are. So I had been really passionate about music. I had wanted to be a musician. I studied music for years and years, and that went by the wayside. I had been writing poetry. I'd been painting. That disappeared as well. Little pieces of who I was just kept disappearing. And then after a while, like I didn't have a me anymore. And I think a lot of women identify with this when they have really little kids that need, 24/7 attention. I get that. But for me, it was several years that I was in that situation. And I decided to leave when my daughters were seeing me in this dynamic that I didn't want them repeating. I didn't want them feeling small and devalued and only good when of service to others. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I could say I left for the children. I left for my own survival too. Both.
Yeah. And all the pieces that you're speaking to there are very, very real beliefs that so many women have that keep them out of relationship. They don't want to be in a relationship because they don't want to feel trapped. They don't want to lose themselves, their sense of self.
Yeah.
They don't want to have no financial freedom. They don't want to, be run ragged like that. Like they think that a relationship equals all of these pieces.
Yeah, I get that. It's not true, but I get it.
No, I know. Well, it's not true. Exactly. Yeah. But it's getting to a place of starting to realize it doesn't have to be true. And I mean, it was your experience. And so it was true for you because you had that experience. And there's an element, as I think you would agree with, that we get what we expect. We get what we believe, what we think about. And while you have beliefs around men, beliefs around women, beliefs around relationship, beliefs around motherhood, beliefs around being a wife or a husband, whatever those beliefs are is essentially what you're creating and calling in.
Yeah.
And so then you have evidence. You see, it's true. You can't trust men because look, he cheated on me. I told you so. But we get what we believe.
Total agreement. I think even one step further than that, which I take personal responsibility for, is someone told me a couple of days ago, we get exactly what we want in a relationship, whether we know it or not. Like whether consciously we've decided it or unconsciously, that's what we're calling in. And I did. Like when I look back, exactly what I had called in. I want to be a good wife. I want to be a good mother. I want to have a fulfilling, family life. I want my family to be happy and us to live all these things. That's exactly what I got. I just wasn't specific on all the other bits. And then of course there was this dissonance when I was in the relationship of, wow, I don't have a partner here. I don't have a real partner. Like I have somebody who is willing to play these roles with me, but that I don't have a deep connection with, and also is perfectly happy to have me in my role of service, only in my role of service, as I had signed up for. So then taking the step to ask for something different was then my responsibility to go, okay, I got what I wanted. It super sucked. Now, what do I want?
Yeah. And how possible did that feel when you got to actually, I'm guessing, were you still in your marriage when you said, now what do I want? Or was that afterwards?
That was quite a bit afterwards. I knew what I didn't want. And I think that's a good start that most people start off with. You know what you don't want.
Yeah.
And my problem was that I didn't think it was possible. I kind of knew what I wanted, but I didn't dare to want, or I didn't dare to ask because I didn't think it was possible. And my ex-husband, when I told him that I was wanting to divorce, he told me, nobody's going to want you. You're older. You've got 2 kids. Nobody wants to date single moms. And because my self-esteem was so low at that point, and because I had spent such little energy and time actually nurturing myself and having myself thrive and flourish, that I actually believed that to be true for the most part, but I still kind of wanted to try. And I did. And
you hadn't had the hope. You hadn't had the absolute hope completely beaten out of you. There was still a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe there could be something else.
And I just didn't know, because I don't I had married relatively young, and I don't think I had a good sense of, what dating is like, or what's out there, or how does this all work? And so it was kind of the black void of the unknown. And I felt really, really very kind of incapable of taking that on when I was just reinventing myself. Like, I didn't quite know who I was or what I wanted, and how would I call in something when I don't even know like what that would be. So there was that whole space, a whole stretch of time that was kind of like that, just trying to get my feet on the ground and get stable and get okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to do a bit of fact finding to see where this is going to go next. So between the end of your marriage, so the day you said, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore, to when you met your now partner, how many years is in between that period of time?
Yeah. Between 2 and 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
I think. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's not to say that I was completely celibate or not interested during that time. It just, happened to be that I found a long-term partner in that time. And yeah, I think also between the time that I kind of really started considering myself to be a compatible, eligible, an eligible bachelorette, that probably took me a good maybe 8 months.
Right. And what about, because at the beginning you said, and this is why you do the work you do now, it was a pretty, well, what's the language that you would use to describe your divorce? It was
pretty volatile. High conflict is one, colorful might be another. Yeah, it ran the gamut. Like almost every potential issue and problem that you might have during divorce is what I did.
Right. And how long did your divorce process take?
So we're 9 years in, and we're now on the division of assets part of it. This is not, don't worry anybody, this is not normal or usual in any sense of the word. This is, partially because I'm in France, and France is super special, and partially because of COVID, and partially because of, high conflict, a lot of delays, a lot of court date delays.
Yeah.
So this is not, usually, it's under 3 years, easy.
Sure. And so I asked that question, not because I knew the answer, actually. In fact, I'm quite surprised that it's been 9 years.
Yeah. Everyone.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Well, and I relate because I know that while I wasn't married, so I've only been married once, very recently, to James, but I wasn't married before. I wasn't married to the father of my child. And yet when we separated, we were 3 months out from being married. We lived as a married couple. We had shared assets. We had a shared home, shared mortgage, all the things. It was 9 years before that home got sold, and I was financially able to start over. I was in a 9-year financial holding pattern. So I actually very much relate to what you're saying. Although we didn't have to divorce. Our divorce was the selling of that home.
Yeah.
And finally moving on. Meanwhile, I was renting, moving from house to house to house. I don't know how many times I moved in those years, but my goodness, did I move around a lot waiting for that house to sell.
Same process.
Yeah.
Other than just the court documents, but really the same process.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what interests me about that is like, there's so many questions are coming to me that I want to talk to you about. But how do you begin to even date and how do you handle a divorce of that intensity while beginning something beautiful and new? And not least, you were going through a massive personal spiritual growth piece at the same time. So how did you handle that?
And that's an interesting question, because I wouldn't counsel somebody to do it the way that I did it necessarily, because I have so much more insight now than I did then. I think then I was just trying to find my way around in the dark. And I do have a certain belief that is contrary to what a lot of divorce coaches would say, which is, just take the time to be single and love yourself and figure yourself out and heal before you do anything else. There is some truth to that, in that if you're in a washing machine spinning cycle and you don't know you're up from your down, why would you bring someone else into that? Because you're just complicating the situation, really.
Yeah.
But if you're in a place where you are starting to like, okay, this is rediscovering who I am and what I really want, and let's take some steps to get there, because we're never finished. We're never in a place where like, oh, I'm perfection, let's find a mate.
Totally. Yeah.
So understanding that refiguring those relationship dynamics with the help of somebody else or with someone else in front is probably the fastest way to heal, because sometimes we also need each other to heal. So I'm not saying that, to bring somebody into the mess, but I didn't, because when I was quote unquote dating, I was really very just dip my toe in or just peek around the corner, very shy. And I didn't really date, but I was very just curious to observe and kind of test and see what was going on out there and what I liked and what I didn't like, and, how to go about that. But also, I had quite a bit of healing to do when I met up. And I say met up, I'd really known him since childhood, my partner now, Tim. But when we reconnected again, I had a lot of healing still to do. And I was very open with that. And I was very, like you said, like many of these women were, no way are we joining anything financial. No way are we living together. No way are we, I need my life. I need my space.
Yeah.
And just like allowing him to accompany me on that process of trusting myself and figuring out my boundaries and what I really wanted and what I didn't want. I think it helped that we were longtime best buddies for him to kind of give me that grace and have that understanding and patience. But I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. You don't, just because you agree to something the first day doesn't mean it'll be the same thing that you agree to in 3 months or even 1 year. We're all living, organic, growing shapes and beings, and allowing ourselves to say, let's try this. I kind of like this idea. And then go, oh, actually, no, I don't like that. Let's change it. And
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, that sounds like a huge personal growth piece in its own right for you to move into a relationship where you are open to redefining all sorts of things as you go along, rather than just going into like, this is what marriage is, this is the box, and this is what you do, and that's how it is forever. Like you've actually evolved to be able to call in a relationship where it's like you're with the flow of it and the ever-changingness of it, and the availability to grow together as well.
That I think that has to be for somebody who I've become is I realized that I was growing so quickly through that divorce process, and that all those triggers and all those pains were stretching me to really level up in just about every way, because I wasn't running from them. I was leaning into them. And then that growth process got me also addicted, but also in the flow of constant growth. Like now when I have triggers or pains in my life, I kind of look forward to it and pay attention to it, because I know, oh, that's my next up level, or that's where I need to pay attention to be a better version of myself or the higher version of myself. So knowing that I'm going to be in constant evolution already is the basis for the relationship.
Yes, absolutely. So your divorce kickstarted quite a journey, didn't it? I mean, I am imagining that the woman, Tiffany, when that woman who was going through who decided to begin the divorce process, is a very different woman to the woman that's sitting here being interviewed right now. Like even the fact that you can sit here now and say, when things, start feeling a bit icky, like I get quite excited because I know I'm on the precipice of my next up level. Like that's an evolved, conscious woman that says that. So you've clearly been on quite the journey. So how did you even know where to begin? Because you've come out of that marriage really predominantly not even believing it's possible to have what you wanted, although there was the glimmer of hope. So where did you even begin?
Yeah, I think it's probably my framing on relationship or my framing on life is that we're here to discover and experience and learn and grow, not to be in a solid state of being or to be bound to some kind of, extremely outdated, in my opinion, system, where we're essentially going to court and making business contractual documents based on like this old patriarchal system, right? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So that's another topic.
A whole other conversation.
Right. So on the premise that I'm alive because I'm supposed to be discovering and asking new questions constantly, and that
yes,
like, how to put that into a relationship is like in respect that the other person is coming with the same life purpose. We're here to grow and discover and constantly be asking new questions and seeking new answers and new enlightenments and new solutions and sharing that with each other. Assuming that I'm on that journey and he's on that journey, how we support each other to ask questions together, or to, kind of we're all these actors in each other's theater plays. And when we get to ask, hey, let's act out like being a traditional couple, or let's act out being a this, or let's act out being parents, or let's get a cat, or let's, there are all these new adventures that we get to experience together, that we get to discover together. And we can also say, hey, no, I'd like to have this one instead, or maybe we can change that, or this isn't working for me, or how do you feel about that, or where do you need more support, or, assuming that we're teaming up together to do this discovery together, doesn't need you in a certain place of perfection or expectation when you're starting, because I'm not really expecting anything of myself other than to be doing my very best, which I think I usually am, and I think most people are. If I can just be honest with where I am, I think usually where I get in trouble, and I find people sometimes get in trouble, is when we say we want one thing and then we actually like really want another thing, especially women. We're afraid to ask for what we really, really want. And so we ask for like something kind of close to it or kind of on the way to it. And then of course we're setting up the whole dynamic for failure because we're not dealing with the truth. So then everyone's unhappy. So I think as long as I'm being really authentic with where I'm at and what I would like or what I would need, then we're okay, whatever that may be,
Yeah. So what was it that, are you happy to share key pieces around your personal growth, your spiritual growth that occurred after your marriage and that have contributed to calling in Tim?
Yeah. Well, okay. So when you say contributed to calling in Tim, I do start out with the belief, and have always had the belief, that love is abundant and around every corner, which is why it's always been true for me. So I'll start with that. I don't think love is a difficult thing to find, because I'm under the assumption, and even was so when I was like in my dowdy housewife phase, in my, which I really, really felt like a dowdy housewife. I mean, completely. But even then I felt like love, it just is everywhere and it just comes to me. So it's never been difficult to call in love, but I would say that selecting what you want from love, or selecting the kind of love that you want to experience or what you want, is, for me, was really difficult, because Tim was very different to, the list of 100 things you make when you first get single. I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want. But he was different than the first love I experienced, which was the fiery love and the kind of the narcissistic love, really, honestly. the falling in love with a narcissist. No, he was super grounded, super stable, super protective. Everything was planned. Everything took a long time to talk through and think through, and just so different, that he really challenged me to have to communicate my needs, or to have to communicate what I really wanted to say, because so that was really good for me. I have to say also that because we're neurodiverse in our coupling, and because many men are just like this anyways, he needed me to explicitly say exactly what I meant and exactly what I wanted, which was so different from my previous relationship, where I had to almost manipulate everything that I was doing and saying just to be able to have some space in the relationship. It was like a negotiation, a constant wrestling and a wrangling for who was going to get their way and have some space in the relationship. In his paradigm, it was like, hey, I'm here to completely support you, and I'm here to love you, but you have to be really, really clear. And that, it took a long time for me to switch out of the, how do I get what I need and how do I get what I want, to just like, oh, actually, he really does like support me and care for me, and he really does want to hear what I want, and how can I communicate it in the clearest way possible. It was something that I wasn't used to, and my mind had to go through an entire reprogramming of I want to say, like, almost being more like a man, but just deprogramming all of the messed up ways that we women have communicated in the past, because we haven't had the authority and the space to just say what we want. Many times, we've had to like sweeten up or finagle or talk into, or dropping all of that was really just so hard for me, because it was my regular mode of communication.
Yes. And it seems like he made it feel safe to communicate clearly. And it was a non-judgmental space for you to communicate clearly. And there was an unconditional love and respect there for you. So no matter what you said, whether he agreed or not, it was safe to speak your truth, something that you've never experienced before.
Well, and it had to be tested a few times too.
I bet.
Because, and I think we women do that too. We like to test our men to see, hey, are you going to stand in this storm or not? Or are you going to still be there when the smoke clears? Like, and I did test that. And it was always shocking to me, always surprising to me, when he was still there going, but I just want you to be happy. But I just want you to be okay. It was like mind blowing to me that somebody could just want that.
Oh my God. Yes, I completely. I mean, that is it's a different kind of man that can hold space for you like that. And I mean, that's a truly empowered man right there.
Yeah. And I think that, I don't believe in unconditional love in the traditional sense, but I think that he has a measure of that. It's like unconditional in the sense that we can explore together. And then if it's something that is really causing a lot of detriment or pain to him, then, we can love from a distance or something like that, not accepting everything, but also just a trust between us that we really want what's best for each other, without any kind of pretense to it. And I have to kind of caveat with that I have maintained a certain distance. Like, we don't have shared bank accounts. We don't, I don't ask
Okay.
him for permission for scheduling this or that. He can barely even like get me to go grocery shopping with him sometimes because he likes to discuss what we're going to have for the week to eat. You know, like
Yeah.
I am a fiercely independent woman in that sense, but that's also just less out of fear of my relationship with him and more out of acknowledgement of what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy in relationships, and knowing what I like to do together and what I like to do separately. And for that not to mean anything, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that that's what I like.
It seems to me from what I'm hearing that you figured that out while in this relationship, but you didn't figure it out before getting into the relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So this guy, Tim, he's been an incredible gift, hasn't he, to come along? And because it seems to me what I'm hearing is that you did the bulk of your healing, your reprogramming, figuring out who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you value, learning how to communicate, like all of these pieces, you did that within this relationship with him.
Yeah, when it comes to things having to do with relationship, most definitely. And I think I've had several evolutions on a lot of those points while with him, meaning I've changed my mind or I've discovered new things about myself while with him. The one thing that I did before the relationship began was I got my self-love and self-worth sorted. And not to say it was sorted like forever and ever, you know, I've reached.
It's an ongoing piece.
Yeah, of course. But I was at a point when I got together with him that I wasn't compromising myself for something that I didn't want.
Okay. And that makes sense to me because my next question was going to be, well, how do you think you came upon him again after all these years? Like how is it that you ended up in relationship with this incredible empowered man that was able to hold you in all the ways you've just described? How on earth are you available for that because it's an energetic frequency piece, isn't it? You know, you're a vibrational match to him suddenly. Like, how did you become a vibrational match to someone like that when you only just in recent history been a vibrational match to something very different? Like, what's the in-between bit? And you said self-love, self-worth.
Self-love, self-worth was a starting point because I knew that since I had been in a kind of narcissistic codependent dynamic with my ex-husband, it was my temptation to fall into codependency yet again and just try to please and try to be sweet and try to be good and try to be. So that was an extreme temptation on my part. One that he challenged me on. He challenged me on, and I challenged myself on too, kind of putting brakes on the relationship. So it took a long time for us to build this relationship up because I was so aware that I had those tendencies and I was so trying to curb my tendencies to please and compromise myself and abandon myself, essentially. But also I remember recalling, you know, when you call in things, you're like, I want this.
Yeah.
And I had called in because in reaction to my previous relationship, I had called in a dynamic that would be egalitarian between man and woman, a partnership. That's exactly what I got. So that was really intentional. And it wasn't because I looked at him and said, oh, with him, this would work and this would, like, I didn't see it at all. It was really step by step. But it turned out that, you know, as I don't think we're in total control of our view. And sometimes things come to us when we just call on them. It was completely that, you know, he is somebody who's very balanced with male and female energy. And he doesn't have any of those like toxic masculine things that were huge red flags and turnoffs for me back then. And because he wants to be really equal and really a partner, And I didn't have to fight him I kept trying to fight him for it. And he was like, what are you doing? So that part was intentional. But if you're speaking about logistically, what I did to call him in was
go on.
Changed my Facebook status.
Very important. Yeah.
Because we went to high school together.
So so really that's what happened. You changed your Facebook status and then he messaged you.
Yes.
It's like, she's free.
Yes. Well, we had been such good friends, and it's so funny when he wrote me, it was like, I'm so sorry I haven't been there for you. You must be having a terrible time. I feel so badly that we've gotten out of touch. Let's talk. And because he wanted to be not my hero, but like he just wanted to be there for me, knowing that I was getting divorced. And also, et cetera.
Et cetera.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
How old were your children at that point?
They were 2 and 5.
Goodness me. And did he have children?
Oh, actually, no, sorry. They were 2 and 5 when I was divorcing, but no, they were a few years older. So I guess 3 and 7. He never had children. He never wanted to have children.
Right. Okay.
And so this is an interesting bit of it too, because my assumption when we started talking on video calls, because he was at a distance, when we started talking, my assumption was, hey, this will never work out, but like, let's just like enjoy each other's company. Let's just enjoy our time together and see, because I was holding everything with an open hand. I didn't want to grasp anything, because I knew that maybe I would never want to grasp anything for the rest of my life. But I was just saying, hey, let's just like appreciate each other and support each other. And you're never going to move over here because, first of all, you can't handle living with a family. Second of all, you never wanted kids. And I really like cats and you don't want cats. And, the list was like super long as to why it would never work. So it was, for me, it was just like living in the moment. Well, guess what? So it turns out he actually is doing great with my, living with my family. We got a cat. He's living in the suburbs, all the way from coming from a condo downtown to getting a house in the suburbs. And I mean, never in our wildest dreams would this have happened, but it has, and he's good. He's happy.
It's so amazing because what you're doing here is blasting so many beliefs. It's like, because I'm doing a lot of who are calling in a soulmate, and one of the big pieces, and in fact, in my Daring and Mighty Love program, I bring in an expert to speak and teach and coach specifically around blended families. And there are these beliefs around. I mean, God, multiple myriad beliefs around. I want him to have kids. I don't want him to have kids. He won't want me to have kids. Do we have kids together? I mean, like this, if we already have kids, do we have another? Do we don't? How do we introduce them? What about the exes? It's a web of questions and wondering, and
I totally did that part.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to meet. On my list was, because I had a list. I call it the man menu, and you have the non-negotiable he must haves, the non-negotiable he must not haves, and then there's a nice to have list. And on my nice to have list was a super yacht. So he doesn't have a super yacht. Maybe one day we will have one together. But on my list was he doesn't have kids, because I believed that a man with children was going to be hard work. There would be a crazy ex-wife to negotiate with, a bit like all the things, because I'd experienced some of that previously as well. Yeah. And then when I realized a big part of this, and it sounds like you did this too, is you have to surrender the list. You have to let go of, there's an element of, you do know what you want, and my language, God, life, the universe knows better, or knows my heart and knows what I need. And I was sent a guy with 2 children. 2, I only had 1, he had 2, and it worked. It works. It's amazing. We're so lucky. but I had to surrender any attachment to exactly how it was going to be, because I mean, even, you know, the Samantha who coaches the women in my group around blended families, you know, she thought that she would need to be with someone that had kids because she had kids, but she's called in a guy that doesn't have children and is great with it, and they have a great dynamic as a family. Who knew? So like you make these assumptions, but you kind of got to let them go, don't you?
Oh yes, I think that. Yeah, I used to use my brain a lot with logical thinking and hard thinking, and the
Yeah,
planning and
yeah,
what makes sense, the
yeah.
responsible and reasonable things to do. And with time, I've just learned that that's a lot of bunk. That what I plan 1 year into the future already is probably not going to happen, much less what I plan 10 years into the future, as opposed
Yeah.
to things that I want to vision and call in without holding on to the how or the what or the, without holding on to the how it's going to happen and trying to control that. Those are far more likely to happen than if I'm to have a detailed outline plan on exactly what's going to happen. Of course, that's going to go to shit. So, like I've just learned to plan differently, like very differently, and hold on to kind of the emotions and the big lines rather than the little details.
Yes, exactly. And in my experience, in terms of calling in what you desire, you got to put the list to one side and just hone into how do you desire to feel. Like it's all about how do you want to feel. You know, you want to feel probably respected, probably safe, probably loved, honored, the feelings. And this is, and then, and the physical reality of that. Does he have kids? Where does he live? How tall is he? What color is his hair? How much money does he have? All the stuff is just stuff. Because at the end of the day, I remember having a real personal breakthrough moment with James. It was before we were married. And I think he was doubting that he was enough for me. So this is the other piece. Like guys they're not perfect either. They have their insecurities, their worries. And that was a big piece for me to even become available to being with. If I wanted an emotionally available and sensitive man, I needed to learn that men aren't perfect either. And I had to drop the need for them to be perfect and on it all the time. Yeah. And I remember he was having a vulnerable moment earlier, probably about a year into our relationship, and wondering if he was enough for me. And it really hit me hard and I said to him, I love you. I love your heart. I don't love you for your job or your income or how much property you own. Or like, I don't love you because you've got no hair or lots of hair or whatever. He hasn't got any hair. I love your heart. And that stands true.
Yeah.
And that's what I was calling. I wanted to feel at home with my guy. I knew how I would feel. It would home, safe, wrapped up, comfortable. Yeah. Someone I interviewed a couple of days ago said, like an old pair of slippers together. We feel like a comfy old pair of slippers. And I wanted to feel like that. Yeah. It's not about the things.
It's interesting what you say, because that's something that I play around with a lot in my mind is I didn't know how that was spelled. Thank you.
Now we know.
Now we know. So the way I describe my relationship, because we kind of grew up together and, we've kind of seen life together, is like putting on my favorite pair of jeans, just super at home and comfy and safe. And and then the idea of like, so what about, all the other things, and how many things on the list do they need to check off for it to be okay? Or how many things on the list can you get externally with it being, like with it still being okay, in the assumption that no one is going to tick all of your boxes, even all the boxes of your needs. Like if I want to have deep spiritual talks, I know it's not going to be with him because he's a rational engineer, you know? So being okay with saying, okay, I'm have friends that I do that with, and it doesn't have to be him. We don't have to do yoga together. It's okay. We're gonna like we can make it as a couple and not do yoga or meditate together, whatever it is. And this is always a questioning going on in my mind. I'm really curious as to how you see it, as well as, what we get within the relationship versus what we get outside of the relationship.
Yeah, totally. And well, when you were going back to when you were saying self-love and self-worth were big pieces for you, and it's the ongoing journey that carries into the relationship, doesn't it? And it's that self-love, that self-worth, that fundamental relationship with me, knowing who I am and what I need, and that it's safe for me to have that in whatever way works for me. And I don't have to look at you, my partner, to be responsible for all the things, because that's just too much pressure to put on anybody. And I used to do that in all of my relationships before James. I put that pressure on them to be all things.
Complete me.
Yeah, complete me. And God forbid you fuck up. You know? God forbid for both of us. And so I think, that relationship with yourself is so key. And when you really have your own back and you have that depth of relationship with you, when he says, I don't want to do yoga, or I can't have that spiritual woo-woo conversation with you, you weirdo. Like when he says that, it's okay. It's like, it's okay that you have your own beliefs and do your own thing. And that doesn't threaten me or our relationship. That's just you. Yeah. And I'm me, and I'm going to go fulfill that in another way. And there's no comment on the relationship. It's just, we're two individual people that we're in partnership. We're supporting each other. And part of that is having our own thing.
Yeah. And So I think that comes back to the whole idea of, the duality of like being everything within ourselves and having everything we need within ourselves, but also being in agreement with somebody else to partner with on those needs and choose a dependency on one another that is, of your free volition. It's not that you need that, but you kind of do, you want it. And I think for me to level up in the ways that I want to level up and ask the questions and learn and grow in the way that I want to, I do need a partner to do that, because this, like one of the plays in my play of life is figuring out this love relationship stuff. And I'm not going to do that by myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that for you then? Do you feel that as a soul having a human experience, one of your biggest pieces, the class that you're taking in this lifetime is relationship? Does that feel true for you?
Yeah. Yes. And I wouldn't limit it to love relationship. I would say relationship in general and in all its different forms, because it fascinates me to no end how there is a myself and then there is another, and how we're actually one and the same, but actually how we differentiate ourselves and how we play with that mirror to mirror perspective on one another. Super fascinating to me how, especially as a mother, seeing the little souls of my children and how they've decided to take very different perspectives on life and how they ask different questions than I do, and how we're on this partnership together to help them grow into the people that they want to be or the people that they're becoming. And, it's the same kind of partnership, but it's a different dynamic. In the love relationship, I get to explore more aspects of fusion.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with my children, I tried to do less fusion because I realized that the more fusion I need as a mother, the less I'm like allowing them breathing space to grow into their
Yeah, so they can sort of grow and individuate. Such an important piece. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, relationship, full stop, all the different types is definitely why I'm here as well. And yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. And who knew that? I mean, talk about making life plans. I mean, you know, I thought when I was finishing school, I thought I'd be working in hospitality for, you know, travel and hospitality and tourism. I thought that was my role. And then it was events management. Who knew I'd end up here? So surrendering to life's flow.
I did both of those. I did event management and I have a master's in tourism.
Yeah, that's all my background. Yeah. I was travel, tourism, hospitality, events management. That was kind of the path that I was on for many years. Who knew I'd be here talking about relationships when it was my biggest pain point?
Central to everything.
Yeah.
You know, everything we do at the end of the day, nearly everything we do is about relationship one way or another.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I'm halfway there, you know, like.
No, I know.
So much to learn.
Of course. Yeah, we do. We do. It's amazing. It's an amazing ride. Well, I've got to say, you're very inspiring, Tiffany, to have. I mean, we've spoken on different topics. You're inspiring, full stop. But in terms of calling in next level love, you know, you've gone from codependent, narcissistic relationship where you felt pretty trapped and definitely not yourself and not living in the flow of life.
Exactly.
And not your best self, to a truly deeply empowered relationship that allows you to go with the flow of life, and together you're on this incredible journey of evolving and growing and becoming more and modeling that to your children.
Constantly becoming, you know, that is the fun of it, I think. And you know, not having any pressures on that, like not having any expectations or pressures on what that was supposed to look like or where I'd end up. I think that's also allowed for some of that. Yep. But, you know, like we're all in this, you know, warped COVID time. So who knows? I think a lot more people have gotten to that kind of philosophy of like, hey, next year, who knows? Nobody knows. Like,
exactly. Yeah, this is definitely a time to learn to surrender, and we have to learn to surrender when it comes to calling in next level love. That's a huge part of it. Huge part of it. Well, my lovely, you can probably tell I'm wrapping up because we're nearly on the hour. So thank you so much for your time. It's just so gorgeous to see you and to speak to you and hear a little bit of your story. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. And I'm so looking forward to having more of these conversations. So join me again every day for the rest of this week and next week. Lots more inspiring next level love conversations coming your way. Thank you again, Tiffany. So good to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours. Really having to rein it in.
Me too.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, ladies.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Mwah. Loads of love. See you later. Bye.